talking about the Bill of Rights. That is during his presidency.
The African Bill of Rights.
Yes, that is his presidency of the...
It is more than that, if you think about it. Changing the name, it becomes Pan-African Organization.
The change of the SANNC to
African
to ANC.
And also what he does.
So he may have produced the new constitution.
The Constitution of 1918, Constitution.
Because it was 1990, because the guy...
1819.
Because the chairperson of that committee is Richard Seme&apos. Is Richard Seme&apos. But I think what is interesting, what is interesting about... Let's think about the 1930s leading up to that change of leadership. I mean, maybe there is just a biographical point, a minor biographical point to note that YaAbantu and Seme and those before them, in a sense, this is the same generation. YaAbantu is born in 1881 and Seme is also born in 1881. They share more or less the same perspectives. I mean, and so the contest in 1937 really is not an ideological contest. They do not represent different visions about not only South Africa but also the fate of Africans. I mean, so this is not as if these are people who represented different visions. In the main, the disagreement was over Seme's leadership style more than anything. But what is going on with Africans? I mean, in the late 1930s, as we said before, the 1930s were probably the most difficult period or decade for Africans. I mean, it starts, the decade starts with the Great Depression, right? That led to massive job losses. I mean, even as we said, I mean, that even for those Africans who had jobs in the beginning of the 1930s, they lost those jobs because the policy of government was that if there was an unemployed white person, that unemployed white person could take the position of an employed black person. The National Party under General Hertzog is in power. Hertzog had won in 1924. He had been re-elected in 1929. And the election campaign of 1929 amongst white parties was Swart in a sense. So there is an entrenchment of racial segregation, I mean, in the 1930s. So Africans are under tremendous pressure. But their own organizations on the political side have weakened. The ICU that had started mobilizing them has collapsed. I mean, by 1929, for all intents and purposes, the Industrial and Commercial Workers' Union has collapsed. The ANC is at its weakest moment under the leadership of Seme for some of the reasons that we have explained. The right to vote for those few Africans, especially from the Cape, who enjoyed that right, they've been removed from the common voters' roll, and so the conditions of Africans in the 1930s are quite horrible, to say the least. That is the context leading to this election in 1937, where YaAbantu challenges picks Seme for the presidency of the ANC because everyone accepted that the ANC was at its weakest moment. In 1935, just to track back a bit, in 1935, when this bill to take away the right to vote
in the Cape.
Yeah, the right to vote in the Cape. And so this organization that was supposed to fight for those Africans, in a sense, that's its weakest moment. And so there is an initiative to convene a convention of all Africans, and it is called the All Africa Convention, right, to deal with these bills, especially the bill that is seeking to take away the right to.
In a way, what occasions the All Africa Convention is precisely the weakness of the ANC.
It is the weakness of the ANC.
It is important to underscore.
Because ordinarily,
what did people do in the past?
Because
when the
ordinarily
ANC had died, or was
it was on its knees. Because ordinarily, it should have been the ANC that should have led this protest to challenge this government that is taking even the little that is there for Africans. But the ANC is at its weakest. And actually, if you read the newspapers at the time, there is this debate, okay, the ANC is weak, but it exists, this parliament of Africans. How do we deal with this matter? And how do we deal with this founder of the ANC, under whose presidency the ANC has weakened them? Now, and I think there's just an important, perhaps, I don't know whether we call it a footnote, that the interesting thing when you look at that period is that you have a re-entry of the Cape into national politics in a big way.
Maybe the first entry, really.
Well, I mean, remember that...
Because the nation as defined is a 1910 phenomenon.
A united South Africa.
And from 1910, the question of the franchise for Africans is postponed.
Yes.
Only to be closed 25 years later, 1935.
Which
made the
that is true.
Cape citizens of African descent more or less participatory.
More or less, yeah. And I do think this point needs to be clarified. Because, I mean, as we said at the beginning, that's quite interesting. Just from a biographical point of view, if you look, the first 5 presidents, generals of the ANC, that none of them comes from the Cape.
Yes.
And that
is it the case as well with the secretary generals?
Well, I mean, secretary generals, actually, quite a number of them who were from the Cape. I mean, one of whom was Mdolomba, who came from what we call today the Western Cape. But actually, Kanata becomes in 1936.
Yes.
In 1936, Seme draws Kalata because Seme is in trouble. He knows that there's challenge to his leadership, so he's trying to get as many people as possible who could support.
But that's also 36. You know, it's post this era you're describing.
Yes, I mean, so there's
the first SG Uplaki.
Yes.
Is Transvaal.
He comes from Kimberley.
Yes.
Yeah, he comes, which is Kimberley is Kimberley Mafike, but it is more
it's more Transvaal.
Yeah, he is there. I mean, when Seme is organizing these meetings, then what happens when Plaki goes with the delegation that went to England in 1914 to protest the Land Act? The person who then who's appointed to act in his position is Silope Tema. Is Tema who's
with whom?
Yes, where there is this issue where Tema and Dube are forced to step down.
Back, yes.
Because there is that disagreement over the issue.
After Silope Tema?
Then after Silope Tema, then we have...
Who was the SG to Gumed?
Now,
well, let's start with
Sefako Makhat.
Yes,
because that is what brings T.D. Mweli-Skota into the fold. T.D. Mweli-Skota is interesting because his family comes from Kimberley, right? But over time, really, he reaches his political consciousness here in the Transvaal. It's interesting when he dies in the 1970s, his house was in Pimville, not too far away from where we are. Gumede is interesting because
after Sefako is Gumede.
Because remember, then you have T.D. Mweli-Skota also being the SG under Mahabane. Because remember that after Sefako Makgatho, it is Mahabane. It is Mahabane who's the third President General of the ANC, right? And then after Mahabane, then it is Gumede.
Yeah.
It is JT Gumede. Then after JT Gumede, it is Pix.
Who is SG under JT?
Now, that is where then the issue of communists comes in.
Yes,
because Khaile becomes an important party to Gumede, a Secretary General of the ANC, and Khaile was known as, well, I mean, he was a known communist in a sense. And so when Pixley comes in, he brings back T.D. Mweli-Skota to be the SG of the ANC, but then they did not get along, and then he dismisses his executive. Remember that the executive was not elected. The President General, it was at his pleasure, to appoint. I mean, and so when he had a difficulty with the executive, then he fired them, including the SG. And so that is where then there was trouble. And then at first, I mean, he gets Sol Plaatje's son. He makes him the SG, but it doesn't work. Then he brings in Mdolomba for quite a bit, because he's trying to build a coalition that will keep him in the position. Then Mdolomba is there for quite a bit, and Mdolomba had been the president of the Cape Native Congress, especially in the 1920s. And so Kanata, who's born in 1895, and we'll talk a bit about this generation when we get to Kuma. Kanata is part of that wave, I mean, that emerges to this challenge to the Hertzog bills. I mean, this attempt to take
a withdrawal of the franchise.
A withdrawal of the
also
franchise.
the other serious bills also
Yes.
at the same time.
Yes, that is true.
That are very challenging to the ANC.
Take us through the areas.
Well, they are more or less, they go back. I think we did discuss them in the first section, which have to do with the Land Act and Africans moving into urban areas.
Which establishes townships.
Yeah. Yes. And Jan Smuts is the prime
minister.
So it's not only about the election, it's also about these issues.
But it is also, because the Hertzog bills are interesting, and usually when we talk about land dispossession, we normally focus 1913, we forget 1936.
We forgot 36.
Yeah, we forget 1936 because let us remember what happens. The land that is allocated to Africans in 1936, it is not the 13% that we usually. I mean, in 1913, in 1913 that we talk about, it was about 7 or so.
7.
I mean, with the
7%.
Yeah, 7%, with the idea that there will be a commission appointed that will then identify areas where those areas, the pieces of land that will be given to Africans to add. That 13% that we usually talk about, that is additional land that is made possible by the Native Land and Trust Act of 1936. And that is the argument that Jan Smuts uses to support the removal of Cape Africans from the Common Voters' Roll. Because he says, well, yes, true, I mean, they are losing their right to vote, but at least they are getting more land. But anyway, just to get back, I mean, I do think, Prof. Ndlovu, that this context, in a sense, I mean, what happens in the decade of the 1930s is critical to understand. Because otherwise, it looks like it's a personality contest.
Yes,
right?
yes. But I think we have maintained a nice,
a nice balance.
a balance.
And yet,
because you know why it's important to underscore. You will tell me your view, but I think at the center, majority of the time of African politics is the leadership question. Which must never be underestimated.
That's true.
We're not quite discussing personalities as we are discussing the leadership
question. That is true.
This combination of personalities and human agencies that bring about the necessary collective agency
and
to confront material conditions on the
and the
ground.
historical context.
Yes. I wanted. Xuma then gets elected in 1940.
But I will ask him to the 3 years after
of Zakaria Mahama. Yes. What did they...
And we'll explain why then Xuma suddenly becomes a factor.
Yes, because you know the time you introduced the All Africa Convention, you were beginning to make...
I was trying to get, but we'll talk about the political and the biographical aspects of Xuma. But let's just deal with this 30s Seme and then Mahabane. Now, I mean, as early as 1932, so we're 2 years into Seme's presidency, the what usually is called the old guard of the ANC. I mean, they had realized that actually this guy that we brought back, that we brought that because we thought he would save the ANC, is actually not what we thought he would be. That is Pixley now. Because they thought, he is the guy who had been there at the forefront, and who had been the founder of the ANC. The ANC is being taken over by communist through Gumede. Let us bring him back.
Of course.
Yeah, so it turns out that actually it didn't work out, and he expelled them from the ANC. They was removing to call an elective conference, and they are trying to have this. And so eventually, in 1937, they succeed to vote him out. And they, instead of electing somebody new, they go to a veteran in a sense.
They go to the old guard.
They go to the old guard.
Yes.
They go to the old guard. They go to Zacchaeus Mahabane, who was a priest. He was a man of truth, more of a uniting figure, because that is what the ANC needed at the time. But you'll ask a question, but why go back to the ANC? Because by 1936, and perhaps we could say the momentum had shifted towards the All Africa Convention in a sense. It had become the mouthpiece of the aspirations of Africans. But the All Africa Convention, at least to a large number of Africans or African leaders, they had not thought of it as an organization to supplant the ANC. It was a convention. It was because given the weaknesses of the ANC, it was like, okay, let us come together to deal with this.
Would you because maybe I should have allowed you to finish the thought, because what the All Africa Convention does is introduce to the national stage a new set of activists.
That is true.
Who become critical to the revival of the ANC.
Would you agree? It's not the first time we have a convention. He speaks about the convention.
That's why I wanted to
spoken about the 1909.
So
we also spoke about this. Is actually is making a
very important
important point.
It's the second convention of this magnitude.
That when Africans face a crisis of sort, they say, let us convince
a convention.
We're calling it a dialogue. Right?
Like the one that supposedly took place at Tunis.
So
that's not a new.
That's why I'm looking.
That's not a new.
Look at me, my body language. Let us now come to. So do you think that there are any similarities to draw? Although, without getting into it, is this perhaps what President Mbeki would have had in mind by its national dialogue.
No, we can't jump. So we're bound for he has to
Okay.
But so anyway,
he has to
so what happens is
complete.
then once because the All Africa Convention is established to deal with this issue, this attempt by the Hertzog government to take away the right to vote for a few number of Cape Africans.
But also the question of
yes,
the land.
Then
the organization of
there's
urban South African land.
Then there is a land question, and then there's of course the issue of segregation that in 1923 Jan Smuts had introduced a law, right? This law says there must be an establishment of a limited number of what was called native villages in the urban centers, right? And so this is entrenched, this segregation of the races, is entrenched also. There is a law that amends the 1923 legislation, and it further entrenches this thing. But it's interesting.
But this is at the height as well of what you indicated of an economy on its knees.
Yes, this is an economy.
And Africans say, let's convene a convention.
There's convene a convention.
Because the other guys, they've resolved the matter by trying to address the poor white problem, which they did efficiently.
Yes.
And Africans are not sleeping, they can observe.
So let's go back to this convention.
Now, the convention, the main guy who then emerges as a leader of this call for a convention, because these calls, like Seme's Clarion call in 1911, they are made through the African press. One of the major newspapers, we have YaAbantu that Jabavu had established in the 1880s. Yes, you have Dube's paper, which is still there, Ilanga Natal, but we have YaAbantu that has been started by the Chamber of Mines, right? But in 1932, a new newspaper is established and it is edited by Selope Tema. It is called the Bantu World. In a sense, it really becomes the main forum.
Bantu World.
Which is the Sowetan today.
Yes. Now, so there's this thing that, man, this right to vote is being taken away. And for the first time, Hertzog has a majority in parliament to amend the constitution, the Union Act, that will enable him to take away this right. Because Smuts has formed a coalition government with Hertzog that for the first time gives Hertzog the power, the votes in parliament to take away this thing. So we do need then as Africans to do something, but the ANC is weak. It is on its knees. So let us have this convention. If you read the newspapers in 1935 especially, there's this call. Let us have this convention. And one of the leading people who are calling for this convention is the editor of the Bantu World, Richard Victor Selope Totema. And the other person who's leading are these Africans from the Cape who have this right to vote. One of whom is DDT Jabavu, the son of JT Jabavu. He becomes a leader of these calls, And so a question is raised, okay, if Jabavu then is a leader of this call, what about the President General of the ANC then? What role should he play? Jabavu writes a letter to the Bantu World. He said, no, I don't mind to be a co-convener of this convention together with Seme. But where is Seme at the time? He's spending a lot of his time in what we call as a Swatini today. He's aware of these debates, but he's really not a part of them because he's far away from these debates. And most of these debates are happening in Johannesburg, in the newspapers in the Cape. But it's interesting who comes to this convention, which is held on the 16th of December, Dingan's Day, because most of these things happened on the 16th of December. I mean, in our history, I don't know whether there is a date that is as significant, at least historically, as the 16th of December, and a place that is as significant in the political history of black people as Bloemfontein, in a sense. There's 16 December, Bloemfontein, that is our heritage as Africans.
So the chaps gather.
Yes, they gather. And then that is where then the debate gets interesting. There are two bills here that the convention has been called to discuss. But suddenly the discussion focuses on this bill that seeks to remove
the franchise.
The franchise. Do versus no, but yes, there's the issue of the franchise, but it can't predominate. There's also the issue of the land. And this says there's the overrepresentation of Africans for the Cape. Where do you guys come from?
You.
Because we've been on this thing for a long time.
And in terms of the demographics, in terms of the voting power,
yes,
they're so small.
Yes,
the total number, it's negligible.
So in the convention,
Dube says Mbuya.
Yeah, because we have a land issue to deal with here.
We have a land issue. We've been fighting these things. You guys have been taking a back seat, and suddenly, here's a conference. You guys, we are all over the conference.
What was the answer? Jabavu is younger, though. I mean, he has that at least as his excuse.
Look, I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, yes, there is this issue. You might have a point. But the franchise issue is equally
critical.
It's critical. And so out of that convention, then there are resolutions made, and one of which is that there should be a delegation that should go to Cape Town to meet with the Prime Minister to discuss this issue of the franchise and to see whether there wouldn't be a compromise.
Yes, Bongani, more characters. Who is in the house?
Okay,
because I'm trying to fish or rather give substance to this claim that it is this convention that propels a new breed
that is true.
Of activists into the national stage.
That is true.
Babu Ndlovu.
That is true.
I have the names in my head. You should do the justice.
No, that is true. That is true. Because now, suddenly, and actually we are raising an important point. Because there are people in this convention and who are leading a call for the convention who are relatively new to this thing. One of whom is Xuma. Alfred Bitini Xuma.
Who Abdurrahman was he?
Abdurrahman is there because he had been organizing also these conferences, I mean, for Africans and the so-called coloureds, right? But Uma is one of them. James Morocco is one of them. Alata is one of them. And there's something...
But Kotane
is one of these people. So we have a combination here of the so-called old guard. And we have these...
relatively new.
Yeah, and we do need...
I do want to ask if Omgov was there.
Omgov is... I don't know whether Omgov is there. I'll have to check it again. But it's possible that he could have been there because Omgov is born in 1910, right? 1909. So
he's not far with age because Kotane is 1905, Omgov is around 1909.
1909. Yeah. But what is interesting is some of the people who are leading this thing, because there is a major difference, a political difference that emerges from that convention, and I'll explain it in a second. Now, Uma, and perhaps we should say something just briefly about who's this guy and why suddenly he becomes a major figure. And there are people like, for instance, Henry Selby Msima, who becomes the Secretary General of the All Africa Convention after they had elected an executive. There are people like Selo Petema, is also there, is one of the intellectuals of the ANC, and is one of those people who had been expelled by Pixley Seme from his executive. There are people like Mahabane. Remember, Sol Plaque is already dead, right? Khubusane is already dead, the old guard. There's trouble, and perhaps we'll get a moment to talk about splits in the ANC. I mean, there are problems in the Transvaal, in the ANC of the Transvaal. I mean, there are some problems there. So, but what is interesting is that Xuma, and perhaps we should focus on him for a second. And it will be interesting to hear what Prof. Ndlovu has to say. So Xuma is born in 1893, in March 1893, right? In the Transkei, about district, in a village called Manzana. His father is a lay preacher in the Wesleyan Methodist Church. Some of the people, so he's growing up in a family that is influenced by Christianity, by missions, right? And the family, in a population, how many people are there? I mean, around the Transkei, around the airport. One of the estimates I've seen there, about 468,000 people, but few educated, about 3% were educated, right? But his family, his family is quite educated. It starts his primary education relatively young for the period when he's about 7 years old or so. One of the people who teach him actually is Poswa, who was a lawyer. And then from there to do his, what we will call today his higher primary school, in fact standard 6 at the time, he goes to Clubberry. And it is one of those institutions, I mean, Clubberry, it was a mission, but a lot of the African elite goes there, I mean, to study, goes to Clarksbury, and after that he becomes a teacher. But then he wants to go and study overseas. He's not satisfied with being a teacher. And so, and there was a number of Africans who had gone overseas, but especially they had gone to the United Kingdom. There were few who had gone to the United States. So one of the people he turns to, because he wanted to go overseas, is Poswayo, the lawyer. He also goes to Reverend Tansey, who had connections with the American Methodist Episcopal Church, the AME Church. And so Reverend Tansey says, no, then go to the United States. But the problem that he had a funding problem. Where am I going to get money to go and study overseas? So he talks to his father, Abraham Gqulunga, who says, okay, why don't you save money from your salary as a teacher? And he does that over a period of 2 years. And then from there, he saves enough money to go overseas. The institution he goes to is
It doesn't fly, it is a boat.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a ship. I mean, you needed to do that 10,000 miles, I mean, in the sea. He goes to an institution.
What was there? A month's travel?
Yeah, 10,000, about a month.
It goes to a very...
Yeah, he goes to Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. An institution that had been started, that was started by Booker T. Washington. And we need to note that because that experience there was one of the major influences in his ideological outlook. In a sense, even as President General of the ANC, he studies agriculture there. When he's done, he goes to Minnesota, he studies a bit there, but he wants to become a medical doctor. He spends a bit of time in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, in Chicago, goes back to Minnesota, he goes to Edinburgh. So from 1913 to 1927, Xuma is away.
He's away.
Actually, he has a doctor of medicine, what we call a Northwestern University.
Yes.
It's not a straight. And he went to Edinburgh, and also Hungary also. Yes, remember he wanted to specialize also as a gynecologist and in obstetrics, So he's well learned, and he is a doctor of medicine.
If you had this collection of degrees and you come back home, you were a quick pick for political activism.
In fact, what happened in 1929 and 1930, the ANC sounded him out. He said no. It's only then, when the Hertzog bills were biting in 1935, that's when he...
So he had been proposed.
He was offered positions.
He said no.
Kotane,
In
he arrived in December 1927. The ANC offers a position to be assistant treasurer. He says no. The faction of the ICU, the small part that was left, they say come to the ICU. He says no. His main focus
is to build a surgery.
Is to become a medical
doctor. No, he works in Alexandra, of all the places. So he might have been accused of so many, but he works as a medical officer, Alex. So it's only when during the time now, the Hertzog bills,
that he comes to, that brings him into this. And then he becomes the vice president of the African Convention. Basically deputizing
the All Africa Convention,
deputizing DDT, Professor DDT, Jabavu. And in a sense, in many ways, you could say he becomes the leading intellectual of this. That then we have, as we said, the person who becomes the treasurer of the All Africa Convention is James Moroka. And it is important to make this post because sometimes when Moroka is criticized, it is as if
he was just a footnote.
It is like he
from the
sky. No, he did not.
Yeah,
he did not fall from the sky. I mean, this is the guy who had been involved, and the SG on the All Africa Convention is Henry St. Pinsima, who had been the youngest delegate at the founding conference on the ANC in 1912. He was a secretary for Pixley. So.
Yes.
So, but I think the main point about all of this biographical detail work even is that what brings Xuma into political prominence is this fight against the Hertzog bills that are trying to take away the right to vote.
That did take away
the right to vote.
I want before we sort of begin how then he presided over the ANC, because his is a significant era to the reshaping of the ANC. Quite frankly, as we know it today, it has been in that image since Xuma. Yes. In a way, this is Xuma's ANC.
If you think about the youth, the women, and the labor
and the alliance,
with the Tato Pact,
but I want to.
And the Doctors' Pact.
I want to, I want to come back to that, but can you just locate, because I do think it's an opportune moment to quickly track Kotane. Because Kotane gets elected incidentally himself as the General Secretary of the SACP, the CPSA, in 1939.
But his trajectory is slightly different.
It's of course.
It is.
I'm saying that because the 1940s.
Because the overlapping membership is also.
Agreed.
It makes it difficult.
Yeah, but I'm saying as a figure.
But he rises through trade unionism. That is the reason why I was saying, and it is an important distinction in a sense, because the leadership of the ANC is drawn, as we said, right from the beginning, from the educated class of Africans, who, in a sense, who arose from these missions, literally Dube, Mahabane, Dube Sefako Mahato, Mahabane, Agumede, Pixley Seme, now we come to Klima. All of them, these are people who are educated Africans. They come from these mission communities. They are articulate and they are talking the language of rights, the language of owning property. And
they're sometimes dismissed as the petty bourgeois.
Not necessarily, If we close off this generation, we use so many names to call them. If you think about it, no. In terms of the fact that they are the ones who inculcated Pan-Africanism into the ANC. Because the 1918 Constitution talk about men and women, Aboriginal race of Africa, not South Africa, not the Union, the African continent. And what they do, the slogan of the movement is Maibuye Africa. It's not Maibuye Union of South Africa. The national anthem is Nkosi Sikelele Africa, which they sing when they get rid of it. So it's not Nkosi Sikelele Union of South Africa. So for me, in terms of political culture, Pan-Africanism, including changing the name, they are the ones, So for me to reduce them to petty bourgeoisie, it's
it's not the reduction, but I'm just saying they would be because they were very concerned about
even their
property.
Even their I don't think it's a swear word.
Maybe. Although socialists, when they do call you that, it's often to dismiss you.
In fact, what I'm trying to say, in terms of political culture, and heritage, no one speaks about the fact that actually Pan-Africanism is really, introduced by them in various ways, which we take for granted. But the petit bourgeoisie, it's prominent in terms of the historiography. That's what you get. But this side, you don't get it.
Agreed. Yeah, there's
even
no elevation of Pan-Africanism.
Even the Bill of Rights,
ideology that was not usual, that had to be made into a hegemony of constituting.
Even the 1923 Bill of Rights, So for me, that's why I'm saying you get the petit bourgeoisie element when you read our historiography, being the one that they've been dismissed. That is what I think Galata, because it's part of this group, will have to be, will have to pay some homage to them in that way, not as petit bourgeoisie.
It's not an insult according to you, but I do. Yeah. My question, because of time as well here, is Kotane.
Yes.
Because my interest in Kotane is the SACP up until the Kotanes had dismissed the initial blacks, the Lagama, Gama. They had been marginalized. Abu Kotane, they're sort of a second, so to speak, wave.
Second wave of
Thabo
Mofokeng.
Yes,
who is also in the All Africa Convention.
Yes. But to be fair, to the Communist Party of South Africa, in a sense, you could say it was one of the first organizations that allowed for the membership of people without consideration to race. And that is the reason why even in the 1920s, there are quite a number of Africans who are prominent members of the party itself. And this links up to your question about Kotane, because what is different about Kotane to all the personalities that we have been discussing here, the leaders, who come through these mission communities, go through schools, universities, and then into the leadership positions, is that Kotane actually goes through trade unionism. His rise to leadership is through trade unionism.
Night schools.
He's night schools. He's one of the prominent unions that he's involved in is the bakers union. Those people who worked in bakeries. That is what takes him into the Communist Party, and he becomes a leading ideologue.
Including Uncle JP.
Yes.
Remember, Uncle JP is more of an African because of his Tswana background.
That's true. So in a sense, what is interesting about Kotane, because the party, I mean, even though there have been Africans who were there, but it is largely dominated by white leaders, in a sense. And that is the reason why Kotane's letter in 1934 becomes so significant, because he says the communism that we are fighting for has to be grounded in the conditions as they exist, not only in South Africa, but also in the African continent. That means even the society that we imagine and how we organize for the realization of that society has to take that into consideration. And sometimes the dichotomy, in a sense, between African nationalism and communism should not be as dark as it is made out to be. And that is what I think, in a sense, makes Kotane such an interesting leader, in a sense, because he's one of those people who are trying to bridge the gap between
the industrial worker.
The industrial worker and the middle class, in a sense, that is leading the ANC. He's the person who's trying to bridge a gap between the African nationalism of the ANC and the communism of the Communist Party of South Africa, in a sense.
The nationalist content of the class struggle.
Yes.
But okay, I think I want to push us now to Xuma's era. Let's start with you, Prof. Your framing of 1940 to 1949?
It's 1949.
49.
Yeah. They're just in two interesting things, by the way.
I want to start with Babundlo. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
firstly, what is this decade for you?
For him,
in material conditions that the ANC of Xuma rises.
It's the war. It's the war economy, and also remember
World War II.
Yeah, World War II, and also which I've been doing deliberately when I speak about internationalism. Actually, I'm speaking about geopolitics. It's not only now when you start thinking you're calling for South Africans not to be part of the G20 and South Africans have to ban the military war games between Iran, South Africa, and China. It's not the first time we're involved in this thing. Xuma has to deal with an important issue in terms of world politics and geopolitics. He has to deal with Southwest Africa, Namibia, the Namibia question. Because remember, during this time, this is the death of the League of Nations. And when the League of Nations dies, we know SMART is a prime mover. Therefore, in terms of geopolitics, we are prominent through SMART. And when the UN is formed, it becomes automatic that SMART thinks that we're going to colonize Southwest Africa if the League of Nations dies. Therefore, Southwest Africa now becomes another
Since Germany's defeat.
Yes. But now Xuma has to stand up and be counted. It's not even the first time that we are challenging, the League of Nations stroke UN, because Silepo Tema, after the First World War, was a leading prime figure in terms of fighting for the Southwest Africa to be handed over through the League of Nations mandate as a province of South Africa. Then Xuma takes over from Silepo. He does so. He fights. He writes memoranda that go to the United Nations discussing this issue. And then remember also in terms of the Second World War, it's the African Claims document. And the African Claims document, and also he revisits the issue about the Bill of Rights, which is now in 1943, the final document. He goes back to that issue. And we do know that it's internationalist So that's why I'm saying that the leadership then had its eyes and focus glued on geopolitical and geostrategic and geoeconomic matters, because comes the Second World War, it's the economy, it's a war economy. South Africa contributes. It has to develop industrial centers. Port Elizabeth, the Harvard develops because we are dealing with producing war machinery, helping our rulers, the British government. So the war, then it makes it a point, therefore, that Xuma and the ANC take a decision that we, regardless of the issues we were fighting, Hertzog bills, segregation, etc., but we're supporting South Africa in this. So to a large extent, what is happening now, it's nothing new. So Xuma and his colleagues have to deal with these issues. And we know that African claims became an important document for us in policy.
But you want to step in because something else happens to the ANC with Xuma. I think it evolves from a parliament to a party. And I wanna bring you in with two specific changes that.
Can I correct you?
Yeah,
you said it. People's Parliament.
Yes, people. I think I'm making a provocation that I think the era of the ANC that is beginning under Xuma, the ANC appreciates that it has to become a political party and not like a liberation political movement. It has to be, I think, because of the forms of organizational structure that it takes. One, what happens to the chiefs and why? Why does this generation, I mean, in the room are these characters of the All Africa Convention in the main, including the other character that we should have mentioned is Matthews, ZK, and all of that. But I'm saying, firstly, tell us about the constitutional changes the ANC adopts,
1943
which changes it as it had been conceptualized and then readjusted in 1918. But
43
Xuma says it has to become something else. Just the thinking. But secondly, which Prof had begun to do, there's a very interesting explosion of the urban population. But also what majority of the reports, government official reports, I don't know whether they are called statistics or not, those things. They begin to worry about the idle youth. They begin to worry about the concept of the tsotsi emerges, these African youth that are rejecting to even look for a job, who want to live out of pickpocketing and all those things. The urban center specifically, your Alex, your Sophia Town, your Everton, and all those things. In a way, there's also that phenomena, the basis of which I think comes this big concern of, for the first time, of a youth in the African community. But also there are other strikes, transport strikes. These are the eras of the buses. Bus boycotts, Everton bus boycott, Azukwelwa in Alex and all of that. Secondly, there's mine workers strikes, and then but thirdly as well, it is the era of the strong, of the strong land occupation struggles. Just juxtapose for us.
In fact, to add on that, for the first time, the strategies of blocking African women to come into the urban cities fail. They come in big numbers.
Yes, that's another big population that grows, is a big settlement population of African women. Yes.
That's why I said,
what does that do to the ANC?
Well, first of all, just the election of Xuma, and by the way, it was a close contest.
Yeah, it was a close.
It was decided by one vote. It was 20 to
very
21.
close.
Who was the contestant?
It was Mahabane and Xuma.
Why did Mahabane?
It was, and there's that element.
Why did Mahabane contest?
Well,
he wanted to.
Well, Mahabane was, and perhaps your question leads us to what did the election of Xuma represent? Because it was an end of an era. The people who had run the ANC from
since 1912
to 1940
had to make way.
They had been there at the founding of the ANC in 1912.
So this is what? This is about 30 years, ne?
This is
29 years. Yes.
28. The people who had run from the first President General to the fifth.
To Mahabane.
Yeah, well, Mahabane,
they come from one generation.
They come from one generation. So there is a generation. Xuma's election as President General of the ANC was not just a change of leadership, it was a generational change. That is an important point to make, because we have, in generational terms, we have to think, these people who were taking the ANC, in ANC leadership generational terms, what were they? And this is important because just a few years later, then the Congress Youth League gets formed. Who was forming the Congress Youth League and why? And these are some of the questions we'll have to answer. Now, we have been mentioning names: Galata, Xuma, ZK Matthews. All of these people who become prominent, I can say Pipi Kliniwe, Bastin Kliniwe, all of these people who lead to the ANC from about Mafutanyane. These are people, in a sense, I call them the bridge. They bridge between they are the bridge between the founding generation and the Congress Youth League generation. These are people who were already born when the ANC was formed, but who were not there at its formation because they were too young. Right? So we said Xuma was born in 1893. Right? I mean, if you take the Secretary General when he was President General, for instance, James Galata is born in 1895. ZK Matthews is born in 1901. Moroka is also born, I think it is in 1895, around there. So, right. So these are people who are a decade or two.
So these ones of the 1910s would have been generation Gen Z. The 10 of the century.
The 10 is a 10 of the century. So it is, and by the way, I mean, you could say, it is an irrelevant biographical detail, but it has some very interesting political implications, in a sense, because their politics straddles these two generations that they are bridging, in a sense. There is a part of Xuma's ideological outlook that is quite similar to the man he defeated, Mahabane or even Pixley Sen, right? In many ways, what Xuma is fighting for is the political inclusion of Africans, but it is not a political rupture, in a sense. Even the methods that he proposes, it is not political confrontation, which is what gets him into problems with the generation that establishes the Congress Youth League. But since this is a discussion about the ANC, how does the ANC that Xuma inherits in 1940 looks like? This is because even though Mahabane had been there for 3 years, but in many ways it is still a very weak ANC, right? It is still an ANC that is controlled by what you could call provincial big men. Right? Because the trouble with the ANC is that in as much as we say it was founded in 1912, but in many ways it was an incorporation of structures that preceded it.
Because it was a parliament.
It was a parliament, and these structures had their own leaders who had been leading them for a long time, who didn't want to let go, right? And it was also, the second point to mention is that it was also in many ways a divided ANC. I think the results of the voting itself, where Xuma won by one vote, tells you that it was a divided organization. But also even in provinces, it was quite divided. Sefako Makgato here in the Transvaal was fighting with Petrus Motseke for a long time. The ANC in the Transvaal was divided for a decade leading up to the election.
Even in the 1920s.
Even in the 1920s it was. In Natal, there is a big fight between Dube and Champion. And Dube is fighting, he has Mtimkulo.
In fact, there it took an organizational, the faction did not demobilize.
It did not demobilize. So Xuma also inherits an organization that just doesn't have money. Right? No. So we do need to take that into consideration, because that's what makes Xuma such a great leader. What is it that he did when he got elected that made the ANC, in a sense, that saved the ANC? Had Xuma been a weak leader, I'm absolutely convinced that the ANC would have died in the 1940s.
Because the membership rises.
Yeah. But now what make the rise, which is another contextual point I want to mention. So this is the institutional context I was explaining now. How does the ANC look like? The ANC that he inherits.
Yes.
But there's something bigger that is going on in South Africa, that South Africa is participating in a war. And because South Africa is participating in a war, so there has to be production for the war. And so it brings a lot of black people.
Back to the urban areas.
Back into the urban areas.
The war economy.
Yeah, the war economy, but also because Smuts, who was prime minister at the time, is following a policy that Africans must not fight in the war. They must not carry arms. So a lot of young white men have to be conscripted to go and fight in the war, and then need Africans to come into urban centers. There suddenly you have this huge African urban population in places like Johannesburg, Port Elizabeth, Cape Town, and Durban and everywhere else. Right. Which means, because all of these things that sometimes we talk about that take place in the 1940s, without the presence of that significant urban population would have been difficult to happen. So Xuma, but there is an ideological split, and it's interesting how Xuma finesses it, because the old guard of the ANC. So when the Cape franchise is taken away in 1936, there is a new structure that the government creates, right? It calls it the Native Representative Council. It says you Africans are not going to be represented in parliament, but we are creating a body for you. It's called the Native Representative Council. This body would advise government on
your aspirations,
on native
affairs. Yes.
And in order to serve in this body, you must be elected by your people. Suddenly, these people who have been opposing the removal of the Cape franchise, suddenly they participate in this structure, the Native Representative Council. They call themselves members of the Representative Council, MRC. And after their names, it will be RV Selopetema, MRC. In the same way, it would have been Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlovu, MP.
I never, by the way, for the record, I've never written my name like that.
But I mean, the important thing is that a significant number of the old guard, when the All Africa Convention and what it was trying to do is defeated, Hertzog implements this thing. Suddenly, they participate quite enthusiastically in the Native Representative Council. Now, that is the ANC that Xuma inherits. It's the ANC, there are ideological differences that are there. It's still a weak ANC. There are splits in provincial ANCs, but in many ways, financially it is in trouble. But these provincial ANCs are still controlled by provincial big men. And it is important to mention this because it gives context to this constitution of 1943. Because what does it do? What is Xuma trying to do with the constitution of 1943? One of the things he's trying to do is to centralize power
from the province,
from the provinces. So the ANC, in a sense, what the ANC has become now, in a way where suddenly provincial leaders have become these big barrels, is a return to the ANC before 1943, what Xuma was trying to defeat in many ways. Because that was a question that had not been resolved since 1912. The power of the central ANC versus the power of the provincial ANCs. Right? In 1912, the reason why the constitution in 1912 was in a sense an interim constitution it was because of a pushback by provincial leaders, who control the ANC. What Xuma does through the 1943 constitution is that he centralizes power, right? He then organizes the finances of the ANC. And he creates a national office of the ANC, and he says the headquarters of the ANC henceforth are going to be in Johannesburg.
Which is the financial capital.
Yes.
By that time.
And then he gives also women, right? He gives them full membership of the ANC.
As full-time members.
Full-time
with the right to be voted for.
With the right to be voted for. Yes. And we should give credit here to his American wife. Medi Hall. Who becomes the first president of the ANC Women's League, because that constitution establishes the ANC Women's League before the ANC Youth League, right? So in a sense, Xuma modernizes the ANC through that constitution. But Xuma is a breach. I think we need to get back to this point, that if you think about the ANC in its 114-year-old history and think about how to locate Xuma, Luthuli, Moroka, those three presidents of the ANC, they are born in the 1890s. They are not there at the founding of the ANC.
But they were born.
But they are already born. Right? So, Xuma...
No, before, I know you are driving to the league.
To the league, yes.
The circumstances of 43 as well is the response to the Atlantic Charter.
Yes. Now,
this is important.
This is important,
which gives rise to Africa's Claims document, in which is the a sort of improvement, update of the African Bill of Rights.
That
it's important to me, and I'll tell you why, gentlemen, because we keep getting back at this point.
Yeah.
People think the history of South Africa's constitution, maybe started at Kodesa.
Yeah.
But as we will see later in the next episode, there's this moment all the time where an ANC president says, let's write a constitution. Principles of the Constitution, Oliver Tambo. Xuma, African Claims document in the 1923 Bill of Rights under Mahabane.
Yes.
Where the origins, as it were, of what we
we
are looking at in 1996 is something that has been going on
for a long time,
for a very long time, which are ideas of Africans thinking about not, I mean, what they are responding to in 43 is the Atlantic Charter.
It is.
It's an international situation. It's a global, there's a global conversation like we're having today.
Yeah.
Prof was saying the League of Nations dies. So it's a conversation, what must come after?
Yes.
When the rounding up of World War II happens.
Yeah.
The Americans and the British are beginning to have a conversation about what must happen after. And the Africans react to what world. So we're back there because Trump's obsession with the Western Hemisphere is trying to restart the world on different terms.
That's true.
And we may be looking at something of a conversation. What happens after the United Nations? What comes after?
Yeah.
And here are these chaps, globalists in their thing. They think of their struggle as a struggle that is taking place on the world stage.
True. And
so 1943, very important to me.
1943, and remember that Africans, I mean, even though the Smart's government...
Yeah, Smart is always...
Even though the Smart's government does not want Africans to fight in the war, making the same argument that Smart had made as Minister of Defense, as the first Minister of Defense when World War I broke in 1940, that this is a white man's war. So when the war breaks out in 1939, Smart still insists that Africans should not fight. But the response of Africans themselves is quite interesting because they say what is at stake also affects us, we who are dark, right? Because our freedoms, if this man Hitler wins, will be some of his major victims. So we do want to fight in this war, and we want to be armed, and we are prepared to shed our blood for the cause of freedom. Even when Nkrumah becomes president, I mean, he writes several letters to Smarts, in a sense saying we are prepared to participate in this war, but we want to participate on equal
basis.
Yes. Insists, he says what, and this is an important context because when by 1943, when it becomes clear that Hitler is losing the war, hence the Atlantic Charter, when Churchill meets with Roosevelt. Yes, and then they set out these principles of a post-World War order, right? This is, the Charter promises equality and freedom for all.
All nations.
Small. And one of the people who are supporting this Atlantic Charter is Smart. Then Nkrumah says, aha, here's this charter. He then establishes a committee that should have the responses of Africans to the charter.
Yes. I have an interest in the names of the Africa's claims documents. African claims
document committee.
I want you to consider this as you go to the initial point you were making about the bridge generation. So the names which are outlined as soon as I find it. Firstly, Uma says most educated Africans. That's the basis of the committee.
Yes.
The most educated Africans.
Yeah.
So I'll just go through a few.
Yeah.
He is the leader of the committee.
And
ZK is literally the convener, so to speak. List of members of the committee. R.G. Baloyi, who was the TG of the ANC.
Yes.
And then Dr. R.T. Bogwe,
Yes.
a
Also
medical practitioner.
Medical practitioner, but also a prominent leader of the ANC, of the
Yes.
TG himself.
Yes, and then James Kalata,
James
who is a
Kalata,
priest
who
and
was
the
also
SG
president
of the
SG of
ANC.
the ANC.
And then Mr. R.H. Kotoi,
Yes.
who is in the ANC leadership. Mr. L. Kabani,
Yes.
a teacher in the Free State as well, but also African Teachers Association leader,
Yes.
president of African Teachers Association. Moses Kotane,
Yes.
who at the time is the secretary of the South African Communist Party
Party.
and a member of the ANC.
Yes.
And then Mr. S. Meg Lepodisa, trader, organizer, but is in the ANC. And then Mahabali.
Yes.
These bridge gap people.
Yes.
And then who is a minister and a chaplain
Of the ANC.
of the ANC.
Yes.
Trade unionist Makabeni.
Yes.
And then Mapikela, TM Mapikela, Thomas Mapikela,
Yeah, the speaker.
who is also an ANC member, ZK Matthews, and then Simbata,
Yes.
Govan Mbeki.
Yes.
Now, I find this name odd to be in this list. He was possibly the youngest, Mwerani, M. Mwerani, yes, MT Mwerani,
Who's related to Govan?
Yeah, who is related to
Govan
Govan.
yes,
T.E.T. Mufutsanyani,
Yeah, Thabo Mufutsanyani.
Thabo
Was
Mufutsanyani.
friends with
Who's after whom one president is also.
Yeah, this is the guy President Mbeki is named after. He's best friends with well, not best friends. Gov looks really
Yes.
maybe they're more or less the same.
By the way, Tia Mwerane, who's a brother to the Thabo Mbeki's
mother. Yes. Then you've got Dr. S.M. Mulema,
Yes.
Dr. J.S.
By the way,
Moroka.
Mulema is interesting. We'll get because he's one of the early medical doctors.
I don't want us to get out. I think just for a sense of mentioning, you know.
Then you have Seme.
Then you've got Reverend Mpito, Reverend Abnam Timkulu,
Yes, from Natal.
Mr. Don Timkulu, Mr. Leo Timkulu, Mr. J.M. Nhlapo of the Wilberforce Institute, an executive member of the ANC, Mr. Selby Ngobo, principal.
of Otlang.
Yeah, then.
Not Otlang, sorry, principal of the Adams College, sorry. Yeah.
Then the most important name,
Pixley Isaga Kaseme is here.
Yes.
And then Sitlugelo.
Yes.
Dr. R. Sitlugelo, Mr. R.V. Silopetema, yes. And then Mr. B.B. Kwiniwe.
Yes.
And then Dr. Xuma, who is the 28th member.
Yes.
And Xuma, obviously, these people were writing all of this, reporting to him, but he participated in the Africa's Claims Initiative. There is an opening sentence. In the following pages, the reader will find what has been termed Bill of Rights and the Atlantic Charter from Africa's point of view. That's the name of the document. And it's there's these characters I mentioned, Roosevelt, as well as Churchill, but also Nazism, and these Africans say they're going to respond to this. President General of the ANC is the convener. He actually writes the preface, giving a historical context to the Atlantic Charter, and those characters include very, 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 very young people. So in 1943, Gov would have been 31, if I'm not mistaken, because he was born in 1909. So I want you to come in now, because you're going to the league. 1909, 1943, or he would have been 34. Yes, he would have been 34 years. I don't know if there is a contemporary Akela.
No, but what is interesting though, it's interesting because actually before 1940,
Sisulu is not here. No. That's my point.
Yes, I mean
the chaps that we are going to know as the Youth League.
Yes,
as the Rivonia Trialists, Sterlings.
Yes,
Gov is in the conversation about Africa Claims document, the charter and all of that. The next time we're going to hear the people who, in a way, I mean, from Sisulu is 1900.
No, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, by the time they talk about being youth,
yes.
No,
Gov.
no, it might not be the case.
Just as a side note, I mean, I'm not making.
No, it might not be the case, but you can. I'll explain to you.
I wanted just to say that. I mean, it's quite interesting actually that in the conference where Seme is defeated in 1937, there's a very young person who's present there. His name is Apimda.
So
there's a young person who's already coming there. AP is born in 1916.
Yeah, he's actually younger than
He's younger.
Gov.
He's younger.
But wasn't Gov in that conference?
The 1937, at least in the list that I've seen, he was not. But what makes him, and actually I can understand why he's part of the African Claims Committee. I can understand. Remember that he's editor of Inkundla YaAbantu. He has become by 1943 a well-known.
He works with Jordan.
Yeah, a well-known figure. Definitely as the editor of what really became a very influential newspaper. It became even more influential because it became the mouthpiece of the Congress Youth League when it was formed. But we are not there yet.
Yes, okay, so we've got that. I want us to start with the Congress Youth League in the next episode. Just complete for me the grounds, maybe you, Babu.
Yeah.
The grounds for why part of what gets removed in the structure as new structures are introduced is the House of Chiefs.
Wow.
What argument did Xuma make?
Look.
He wanted so much centralization that he didn't want the chiefs. What was the argument?
The argument is that, I mean, if I remember my interview with the young Joe Matthews, because he was a youth then, his argument was that most people make a mistake and argue that the Youth League came into being in the late 1940s. He says that it already had provincial branches in the early 1940s. So to a large extent, they don't have to become members of the African Claims. Xuma is pushing them to establish themselves as entities that are becoming prominent in 1944 or whatsoever. It's just that the issue is they just didn't pitch up in 1944 and then we recognized them. He says that Xuma has been working on it. So it's the trade union movement. Remember? I'm coming back.
I want us to start that conversation in the next episode.
Yeah, I'm
closing, chiefs.
I'm closing the argument. Remember, there needs to think about the non-European trade union movement and also forming the trade union, which is led by Uncle JP in 1946. So he had women, he had trade unions, he had the youth. So who's going to lose in terms of this equation? The chiefs are the losers. For him to accommodate these three, because in his mind, he thinks that the chiefs may not be supportive in terms of making it a point that women get space, within what he's thinking about. They will think that the youth, no. They will also think that the trade union movement might not. So it was a choice he took as the leader of the movement. So it's not necessary.
But I remember reading that the structure itself had become almost non-existent for many decades.
I wanted just to add.
Well, many years, I suppose. But I don't know.
Yeah.
What did you find? You think in his modernization project, he knew for sure the the thing that represents the old guard the most is the house of
It's any modernization. It's taking, is taking responsibilities because the other sectors do matter. The chiefs had their time, in 1912. So he has to bring in these three. So he has to take a decision.
Do you agree? I want to just to add perhaps a bit of detail here. Remember that the leader of the ANC who had brought chiefs into the fold at the center of the ANC was Pixley.
Yes.
Right? And in fact, when Xuma gets elected in 1940 and he constitutes his committee, he includes Seme in the committee.
Yes.
And he makes him the Secretary of Chiefs. He does not move against chiefs immediately. Right? But let's track it back. What attracted chiefs to the ANC? What attracted chiefs to the ANC? In the main, it was the issue of land. That is the reason why there was a significant representation of chiefs in the founding conference in 1912. And most of the funding in the early period for the ANC came from chiefs, right? Even when the ANC was fundraising for the delegation that it was sending to the United Kingdom in 1914, most of the funding came from chiefs. We mentioned earlier on that even the YaAbantu newspaper that was started in 1912, the funding had come from the Swazi royal family. When that delegation of 1914 failed, in a sense, there was a bit, the chiefs started to humble and like say, actually, this thing we were putting money is not working. So much so that when the ANC wanted to send the delegation after the end of the First World War in 1990, not so many chiefs contributed money for that delegation. So I think it is one contextual point we need to keep in mind, that the chiefs themselves
lost interest.
They were losing interest. But when Seme gets elected in 1930, he tries to bring them back. Right? He tries to bring them back. He has the Swazi royal house now, King Sopoza, who's supporting him in the main. He tries to bring them back, but it really did not work. Their participation was not as enthusiastic as it had been towards the founding of the ANC and the deputation that went to England. But there were leaders of the ANC, even when Xuma won in 1940, who were still interested in chiefs. I mean, in 1920, this is about 1926 or so, Mahabane writes an open letter to chiefs when he was President General. I mean, so the so-called ANC Old Guard was still interested in the chiefs. There's something that happens in the 1940s, in a sense. We were talking about Xuma, that there was a shift, and I've been using this term quite a lot, that while the early ANC had been anchored in these clusters of educated people who were in the missions. They were known Enanta, they were educated people who were there. Eatondale, I'm just using Natal. I mean, you would go to Lovedale and all of these places, King Williamstown and all of those things. So there were these clusters.
Petersburg.
Petersburg, there are all of these. Bloemfontein. There are these clusters, and the leadership of the ANC, the leadership and membership of the ANC was drawn in this thing. And by 1940s, as more Black people move into cities, also in urban areas, the ANC changes. In a sense.
More youth and women.
Yeah, the gravity of the ANC also moves to these centers. That is the ANC that Xuma starts leading. He then makes Johannesburg the headquarters. So he's no longer leading a rural base in a sense. I mean, that is anchored on elites.
We have more women coming in, even youth are
coming,
Malaita, so he has to find
things.
a way of making them ready.
Now, so the chiefs as a political force of sort, I mean, they are losing influence. And in fact, when he changes the constitution, and remember, the term of an ANC president was 3 years. It's interesting that he does this after he gets re-elected in 1943. That is when people like Seme gets rid of them. He's taking now charge of the ANC, and he's
and the
younger people. And so the ANC is becoming largely an urban political movement. It's no longer an elite movement that is anchored in these clusters of educated elites.
Mostly
decentralized
communities.
It does away with provinces.
Yeah. So that is the context to that constitutional change.
And
actually, it is the reimagination. You made this point earlier on. It is the reimagination of what the ANC is about and what it is fighting for.
Do you still maintain the form that it took? And we will start with
that's fine
for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
This is in my view, the reason I wanted us to take very basic time. I am convinced this is the history of the ANC most unknown.
But you can't
until most people like,
No, you're going to ask us again now how the chiefs come back in 1994.
No, I won't. But what I want to conclude
the House
with,
of Tradition.
What I want to conclude with is, I'm not sure that that point is sufficiently made with its 1943 robustness, by the way, of the chiefs. But
yes.
Ngqulunga,
no, it's like
it will return. Because up to that point, there's no single chief. That's one of the things about the ANC. None of the chiefs ever lead the ANC like other parts of.
No. True.
Yes, and we'll come back to it.
You can't say that because Tillis is coming.
No, but in this era,
until
the House of Chiefs is removed.
No, none of them.
Yeah, none of them.
What I'm trying to say to you, even when Luthuli comes in, the Zulu Royal House still remain important for him.
I agree.
Yes.
He's the first chief to lead.
But he's an elected chief.
Agreed, but I'm saying in the ANC, in any way, the point I want to ask from an organizational form point of view, your thesis was this was a people's parliament, Africa's people's parliament.
It's not us, it's them who define themselves as that.
And this explains the organizational form that prevailed 1912 to the 1920s, 1930s.
That's true.
This is a character.
Yeah, the political organization changes.
Would you say what does it shed the skin of
people
of parliament to become the liberation political party? What would you call the organizational form it takes from 43?
Then we are going to argue about semantics. Therefore, maybe we have to go back to our languages because now you start hearing the name masses. What's the difference between masses and the people? Because that was the people.
So part of what you would say is the first thing is it becomes a mass-based organization.
We're going there. We're going there.
Yeah.
He lays the framework. We're not yet
it makes
there.
sense. I mean, all parliaments are very different organizational form.
Yeah.
But it's interesting though, because there's a new lexicon that starts a new language, new terms. I mean, if you read it closely, that suddenly start appearing. I mean, the idea of liberation actually starts around that time. That, I mean, when you read the documents of the ANC,
this book where's the book that you've brought in?
Lembed.
Lexicon.
It's interesting.
Okay, but before we
I know
you are trying to base.
I want to get into the political organization because I do think there's
what form do you think?
I think there's something there. And remember what influences in the first, yes, there's an idea that this is the parliament of the people, right? But actually the moving spirit, and that is how I think of Seme in many ways, the moving spirit behind the formation of the ANC, one of the major influences that Seme brings, he has studied at Oxford. He spent a lot of time in British Parliament, right? So part of it, he's thinking the House of Lords and the House of Commons in how we structures the ANC in 1912, right?
Because, so this one is a Yankee. Xuma is New York.
Xuma
comes from a world of libertarians.
He's thinking of an urban. He's thinking of an urban political organization that is fighting for the rights of Africans. Yes, he still believes that the ANC represents, it's a body that represents the interests and aspirations of Africans. But there are also other organizations that exist at the time. The ANC cannot claim that it is the only organization that exists, even though a large section of the leadership of the ANC that had participated in the establishment of the All Africa Convention went back in a sense to the ANC. But the All Africa Convention did not die. That's where the new unity movement comes in, right? So Tabata and all of that, those, they stick to the All Africa Convention and it becomes something else, right? So yes, the ANC is still, or at least its leadership in the 1940s, still believe that it represents the aspirations of the African people, right? But it is not a parliament in the sense that it had been conceived in 1912 when Seme.
We'll return to this question. I like Prof's very direct, hardcore answer.
Yes.
We are now beginning to see a contestation between mass movement and people's parliament, in which case there's a political semantic. Yes, a political semantic being underscored that are these masses the people?
Yes.
And I mean it's an interesting question. I think
that's true.
Certainly the reason I tagged the SACP and Kotane earlier is for this era that we are about to enter into in the next episode. How about the break?